Hey, welcome everyone to Talking Drupal. This is episode 70, and today we're talking about collaboration. We record this on YouTube in a Hangout every Wednesday afternoon. So visit us on talkingdrupal.com if you want to watch these live or interact with us. And John, you're missing your lower third.
It's been catchy today.
Hey guys.
I had it before I accidentally left the Hangout when I hit the mute button.
Yeah, we've had some Hangout technical issues today, so this is our second attempt at getting the show going. So here we are.
I can't get it back.
We have a full house today. It's nice. Jason Pimental from HW Design, welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's been kind of a long fall. It's been pretty busy.
That doesn't sound good. A long fall from what?
Touche. I was 2 weeks ago down in New Orleans for a CSS Dev conference, and then last week I was at the other end of the spectrum up in Halifax for the Collide conference, which is a much newer event. It was really great. It was part of a music festival, so we got to see lots of bands.
What is the Collide conference? That one.
So it's part of the Halifax Pop Explosion, which is the music festival. So you sort of think of it like a very small version of South by Southwest.
Right. Okay.
And this is the first year they actually split their creative and technology conference out on its own. So that's what Collide is. But it was a really great lineup. 2 days, 3 tracks. Naomi Atkinson and Steven Sagmeister were giving some of the keynotes. They were really fantastic. And we got, with our badges from the conference, we got into all the music venues, so we got to see a bunch of really great bands play in the evenings. It was really a lot of fun. Halifax is a very pretty city.
It's nice. It's very New England-like.
It is, and actually there's a pretty strong tie with Boston that I wasn't aware of. But there was a bunch of years ago, I guess maybe 80-plus years ago, there was a horrible disaster in the Halifax harbor. The explosion of a munitions ship that ended up, I think it killed like 1,300 people, and Boston sent a huge amount of aid, and actually Halifax has been sending Boston a Christmas tree every year since.
That's right. There's a cemetery there for the buried, right?
Yeah.
That died in that explosion. Yeah. Excellent. Well, welcome back. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
We also have John Picozzi from Oomph. John, you want to show off your new mug?
Good afternoon. Yeah, look at this.
And that's a coffee mug, by the way.
It is a coffee mug, not this mug.
Right. No plastic surgery yet.
It is not a coffee mug. Yeah, we'll be giving these quality mugs away at Nude Camp this weekend. So come by the Oomph table, grab your coffee mug. You can get your morning coffee in a freshly washed mug.
Awesome. So they are clean. That's good to know. I'll grab mine.
I ran all of them through the dishwasher last night.
Nice.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Also, we have Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Design.
How you doing? Looking forward to a couple things this weekend. Got Halloween coming up, and then of course Nude Camp. So
I'm not going to ask you which one's more important. I don't want you to have to answer that. So tell me what you're doing for Halloween.
For Halloween, I am going to Salem. And
nice.
My wife...
You'll never make it to Nude Camp.
No, we'll be fine. My wife made costumes this year, so we're going to be Hades and Megara.
Oh, nice.
Should be fun.
That's great.
Oh,
My hair will probably still be blue, which I figured was fine since it's a Drupal event.
Have you ever been to Salem for Halloween?
No.
You better be prepared for some serious traffic.
Yeah, I'm expecting that.
Okay, yeah, it's a fun place to go. We've been up there a few times around the Halloween time, but
yeah,
very busy, but not right on Halloween. So it sounds like it'll be fun. Remember, you have an early morning on Saturday.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, good.
I'll be fresh. I'll be fresh and bright-eyed.
Awesome. So today's show, number 70, we're talking about collaboration. It's one of the things that I think for people on this phone call or this podcast strive in. It's one of the things we excel at, is collaborating with others. John's making a face that maybe he's not so good at it, I think.
John works at telling other people what to do all the time.
Exactly. That's one form of collaboration. I'm very familiar with people like that.
Middle management. I don't. I feel like collaboration is always an ongoing thing. You always got to work at it.
So, why do we think this is an important topic to spend a little bit of time on today? I'm curious to know why collaboration is a topic. It's not really technical at all for us. It's not necessarily related to Drupal.
Oh,
so
well,
why are we talking about it?
It's at the heart of every open source project. I mean, there would be no such thing as an open source project. It would just be Dries' blog. I mean, and that's what's, I think, kind of fascinating about it. We, over the years, have had literally thousands of people collaborating with Drupal and its ecosystem. And sometimes it works well, and sometimes it works poorly, and everybody's always, generally working to make it better. But without that kind of collaboration, I wouldn't see little security update emails coming in right now from the Drupal team. I mean, it's all driven by that.
Yeah, I mean, as Jason's saying, collaboration is definitely at the heart of Drupal in any open source project. And I think another reason why it's important for us is the web in general is a very fast-moving technology. Month to month things change. Collaboration, is a tool that helps you keep up to date. You can't monitor every technology that you use, but if you have a network of collaborators, they can let you know when something important comes out. You can let them know when something important comes out. And typically people that you collaborate with have different strengths than you have. So they might be monitoring a different piece of the pie. One group might be really passionate about performance, and another might be passionate about security, and both of those are very important. If you collaborate, you just get better coverage.
The definition, because I looked it up in the dictionary, says an action of working with someone to produce or create something. And there's actually a word called a collaborationist is an actual person who does that. How do you, is collaborating different than teamwork?
I think so. I mean, I think one of the ways I know Oomph uses collaboration internally is pulling in development resources to tackle a problem. An example would be if I had a hard feature or a problem with a website that I was building, I know that I could go to our team leader and other members of the development team and say, hey, can I talk to you guys for an hour, and can we kind of brainstorm a solution to fix this? And we can all get into a room and work on this thing for an hour or 2 hours, however long it takes, and we can really come up with a quality solution that I may not have thought of on my own. I mean, I'm a relatively smart guy, but everybody's got a different way of looking at things, and that is kind of at the heart of collaboration, and being able to look at things from different angles often gets you a better solution.
I always feel like people who can collaborate, it's part of their DNA. Like, it's a part of who they are as a person. And you can put people together sometimes, and you can try to make them collaborate, but it doesn't always work well. And I don't know what that is.
Well, I think ego is a big part of it. I think there's certainly a lot of crossover between the terms teamwork and collaboration. I think collaboration is something that is more permeating than a given team. I think it's just who you are and how you are more than anything. I think if you're sort of given to that kind of desire to have more perspectives inform what you're doing, and the interest in sharing what you know in a way that is motivated honestly, I think that's when you get the true sense of collaboration.
Yeah, I agree with that. I couldn't agree with that more. I think that there are, there are different types of people. Obviously, there are different personalities of people. But I think that, obviously as I'm looking at show notes, there are good collaborators and bad collaborators. People that don't like to collaborate and people that do. And I think really what drives that is the ability for, a good collaborator to realize that they don't know everything. As Jason said, ego. A lot of people out there are afraid of looking bad or afraid of not having all the answers. And something I realized very, very early on in my career is like it's impossible or next to impossible in this industry to have all the answers and be able to know everything. And sometimes you have to work with other people to get those answers and to learn and educate yourself to what the right solution is going to be. And I think that's really where, whether you're pro collaboration or against it, that it comes really down to that. Do you realize that you do not know everything, or do you feel like, oh, if I don't know everything, it's going to make me look bad?
And Jason touched on that with using the word ego. And do you always think that everything you say is right, and that you can't open up to getting input from others?
Quite the opposite. I usually think most of what I say is wrong. And then I'm surprised when it is right.
I agree with you. And the interesting thing, I brought up teamwork because you can belong to a team, and that team may not collaborate very well. And you could also be collaborating with people that are not part of a team whatsoever. I mean,
yeah, a lot of times
really the four of us do that pretty much on a regular basis. We collaborate on lots of things. There could be little problems, they could be projects, it could be this show. There's lots of ways that we collaborate, the four of us, on all kinds of stuff.
A lot of times that inability for teams to collaborate can be dictated by management.
I think it's absolutely driven by that. I mean, it's all about the workflow process.
Yeah, a lot of corporate environments often reward people for finishing first, finishing fastest, and getting things out the door. And sometimes that can lead to just a really bad environment for collaboration. If I know that Jason and I are on a team, and if I beat Jason to the finish line, I'm going to get a bonus and he won't, or vice versa. Well, I'm not going to be willing to work with Jason to get to that finish line together. So I also think a lot of it can do with corporate culture and what the end goal is.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I mean, collaboration, management has a lot to do with how collaboration works, but I think it's a mistake to think that collaboration doesn't mean that competition doesn't exist. I mean, just because you're collaborating doesn't mean that you don't push each other to be better. I think that's part of why collaboration is so good too. I mean, if you're working with somebody else, a lot of times you tend to have higher standards. You want to, you don't want to. If you're working on a website yourself, you might just make compromises and just hack something just to get it to work really quickly. But if you're collaborating with somebody and they're going to be looking at your work, you're going to take more pride in that and do it in a way that people won't look at and be like, what was he thinking when he wrote that?
Well, I think there's an interesting trend in the larger web design industry as well that I've seen a lot of groups of people that end up working together from various freelance businesses, separate design studios, but they frequently come together and work on projects much in the same way that we do. I mean, Nick's done work for me. We've done work for Nick. I've done work with Steve, and Steve's done work for me. John and I used to work together in another agency, and we've continued working together in several others since then. Never formally part of a team, other than when we actually worked in the same company. But payment or no, there's always been a free exchange of ideas and feedback and input amongst all of us.
It's interesting what Nick just said too about code and just getting something out there to see as a proof of concept. I'll often slap some code together and then go back and iterate on it and clean it up and get it to a final point where I think it's quality piece of code. But I'll then always ask our team leader or one of our senior developers to come over and take a look, and I very blatantly ask the question, like, is there something I could have done better here? Is this is this clean enough? Is it to the standard that we should be putting out? And sometimes it's yes, yeah, it's great, it's good, it's awesome, go with it. And sometimes it's like, well, you could do this instead of that. Even that small amount of collaboration is, it's helping me grow as an individual, but it's also making sure that the standard of my work is at the same level as other team members and the division across the board.
What are some examples of collaboration that you guys are involved with? And we don't need specifics in terms of companies or particular projects, but the kinds of things that you're doing that would fall into the collaboration category.
Actually, just something that I announced on Monday when I was giving a talk up at Refresh Boston is something I'm working on with the people at Future Insights that put on Future Web Design. We're doing what will hopefully be a series of workshops next year, but right now it's just us working together to put together one and make sure that we have it figured out. And beyond figuring out how we're gonna split ticket sales, we're just kind of each bringing what we know to the table and using the stuff that we have. So webcoffee.co has its own little identity. And that's what we're working with for now. But yeah, it's just it worked out and it came together quickly, so we could test the waters and see if it makes sense to take it further.
That's collaborating on a business venture to some degree, right?
Yeah, and also on the stuff around it. They put on lots of conferences. I've spoken at a bunch of them, but I've also put on workshops with you guys, and we have a pretty good. We've kind of figured it out pretty well. I mean, how to what we really need to have on the day, and what goes into putting on a good one, and that's a different kind of thing than what they normally do. So it's been an interesting way of doing that together.
Yeah, I think there are so many different kinds of collaboration. I mean, I know that. On a daily basis, I could be collaborating with another developer to try to figure out a functional problem that I'm having, or a front-end developer to figure out some sort of user interface, issue that needs to be resolved, or project manager to figure out what the right timeline or budget for a project is. So I think the big picture is that you do on a daily basis, you can do a lot of different types of collaboration, but Jason brought up a great point that it's not only internal collaboration, it's collaborating with clients, external resources and other companies as well. We are Acquia partners, so we do a lot of collaboration with Acquia when it comes time to launch a website, or when we're getting ready to launch a website on one of their platforms, and we need to get different services up and running. So there's a lot of collaboration there. So I think keeping that in mind as well, that it's not just internal collaboration; it could be external or business related is important.
Yeah, I think that's also an interesting point. There's different I guess modes or methods of collaboration. I mean, there's there's community collaboration. Good example of that is what's coming up this weekend with Nude Camp. There's internal collaboration, which I think you guys kind of have because you have coworkers that you collaborate with, you have employees that you collaborate with. There's business collaboration. as Jason said, he and I have worked together, and Steve and I have worked together on projects. And then there's also there's project collaboration. You have to collaborate with your customers on getting their project to be the best it can be. I know we've all worked with non-collaborative clients in the past, and it's always a battle. But the business world, generally the most successful businesses are collaborative at some point in their process.
Here's an interesting question, and Nick just kind of raised this a little bit, but when you're working you're working with a client, and you need to collaborate with them, and somebody on their team is maybe not the best collaborator. How have you guys handled that? How do you kind of work around that? Because at the end of the day, you need to get the project done, and if that person is not being as helpful as they could be, or is hindering the process, what are some tips that we could probably give to help that and get over that hump?
Well, I mean, I think a good place to start is Mike Montero's book, Design is a Job. I mean, it's one of those things where if they're not collaborating, it's what he would call one of those account level conversations generally. I mean, you can use some basic psychology. It's one of those things where you just start small. Like maybe you need them to write the content for the entire website, and you're not getting that buy-in. If you can just if you can ask them to proofread a paragraph and then just slowly build from there, sometimes it's one of those things where once you start that momentum, it really builds on itself, and people are, a lot of times people, in my experience, the people that are the most combative are because they were burned in the past, and if you can, let them know that you'll take care of them, they'll be on your team. But if it gets to the point where they're not willing to collaborate at all, it's a tough question.
I do like I mentioned early on, I do think it's either part of who you are or it's not, and you can't make someone be a good collaborator. I mean, you could set some guidelines to say, hey, this is how I'd like to work with you, but that's not really always what, in general, my feeling for collaboration is.
Yeah, and I think that we could sort of break what we're talking about here with like clients in particular into participation at least, if not true collaboration, because I think it's a very real problem. I mean, we can't produce a great website for our clients in a vacuum, or the organization you work for. Like, you have to have participation at the bare minimum. It's certainly nicer and better to have true collaboration, but when you give people, I think a lot of the times there is that, is it in their nature or not? But there's also something that I think happens in our open source world as well, a little bit of fear and uncertainty about how to do it. And when people aren't really quite clear on exactly what is the concrete step they can take to collaborate with this person on this project, then they freeze. They just don't do it. And so a lot of times it is, like Nick said, giving them that first little thing to react to. That, like in Drupal, giving them the issue to comment on that's simply proofreading the help documentation and making some comments on it. Like finding that easy way in to remove the friction of the uncertainty part, I think is quite often one of the real keys to getting people to engage.
And I think that's a really excellent point, Jason, is that sometimes you need to let people know how to collaborate with you in whether it's the open source or whatever world it is say, here is the way to do it. And that could always jumpstart someone into collaborating when they may not have in the past, because it's a very clear definition of how to do that.
I think Nick's description is perfect. I mean, here, proofread this thing. Like, I'm giving you something to react to, so you don't even have to go and create something. Just react to this. Did I characterize this one thing well? And especially when you're aiming it, like, you do it strategically, you use that psychology to put it in the realm of the stuff that they know the most about. Like, I took a stab at writing the about copy with your mission, but I think you know it better. What do you think? And getting them to contribute that way, like that, I think that's one of those real important keys to giving people permission to really engage.
Yeah, I think Hillman Curtis in his book Making the Invisible Visible does a really great job of talking about how to include the client and get their kind of feedback and buy-in on different things. But one point I think is worth making here. Jason brings up some great points about telling them how you best collaborate. But I think you also have to be receptive to hearing how they best collaborate.
Right.
I think it's definitely a two-way street. You can't just say, this is the way I collaborate and this is the only way I'm going to collaborate. You have to be able to say, okay, well, I like to collaborate this way. What do you think? Okay, then yeah, we could collaborate, your way as well, and give and take basically is what I'm trying to get at there, I think.
So when we started talking about the conference that is happening on Saturday, and we promised everyone we'll stop talking about it in 2 weeks, but the first email that went out, I sent it to a number of people outside of the people who actually are on the committee today, and said, hey, are you interested in being involved in something like this? We'd like your help. And it really sort of whittled down to really 4 or 5 people that were spent a lot of time in putting this conference together. And those are the people that in my life are the collaborators. I mean, people that I collaborate with regularly. And that's why I keep coming back to this DNA thing. And I think it's a part of who you are. Do you participate in things that are not necessarily going to benefit you sometimes, right? Because collaboration isn't always something that you're going to benefit from.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of interested in what you guys thought about that in terms of people giving time to something that they don't always get direct benefit from.
Well, I want to go back really quick to a point you just mentioned, because you mentioned a couple of times that you think collaboration's in your DNA, and I think I disagree with that. I think it's more of a habit. And I think the thing is, and just like any habit, if you're not in the habit, it's difficult to conceptualize that. But it's also something that people can learn. I mean, when I first started my business, I was like a typical like a lot of web freelancers are out there. They hold everything close to the chest. They're afraid that people are going to steal their clients. They're afraid people are going to steal their knowledge. Don't collaborate with people. They're out to try to find as much work as they can, and they feel like they're on an island. But thankfully I got into the Drupal community at the right time, right place, and met some people that really showed the lie that is, and showed me how collaboration can help grow both businesses beneficially, that there's knowledge out there that people can share with me, and there's stuff that I can share with them, and both can benefit. And it's, at this point, it's become such a habit, it's easy to see how, you would think that it's something I've always done.
Right.
You're saying it's nurture, not nature, right?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. So I just pasted another book into the show notes, because I think the more Nick was talking about this, the more it sort of spoke to me about a book that I know that Stephen cares about a lot too, which is Linchpin by Seth Godin. And that's where I started to really agree with Nick about the nurture thing, because I've tried to nurture that in myself. And I think I may have had the tendency, but I think I have honed it considerably in the last 4 or 5 years to really work at being an essential part of whatever group I'm in by giving as much as I can, whatever aspect of that community. And I think there's huge amounts of benefits that come to that for me, but it also makes me better at trying to be a part of what other people are doing without having it to be driven by me.
Yeah, you also have to. I think you also have to have a feeling that giving back is important. And I think that's really where it comes in. I think that's where it really comes down to. Essentially, both of my parents were teachers, and watching them, go to work every day and give back to their students and make a difference in their students' lives, really impacted kind of my outlook on what I want to be able to do in my career and how I want to impact other people's lives. And I think that's that can be a big part of the willingness to collaborate. I mean, I am an adjunct professor at a local university, so I go in, I teach students, I give back that way, but I also view organizing this conference and showing up at Drupal camps and helping out on Drupal.org is just a way that I'm giving back to the community.
Right.
I'm helping better somebody else's existence.
John, you brought up something that's just really interesting to me right now, right? Jason, in your life, the people that are closest to you, how many of them are educators or people that have given back to people around you, to other people, right? Answer that question.
Almost all of them.
Okay. Right. Your dad was a professor.
My dad was a professor.
Yep.
My brother and his wife are both professors.
Yep.
I have several other relatives who are also professors. When I met my wife, she was working in a school.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a genius. She's absolutely brilliant.
And she's 6 feet away from you.
And she's 6 feet away from me. And that's as far as I like to be away from her.
There are so many things I want to say right now.
No, but so I don't want to get off my point, though, right?
No.
John, you just described the giving and that part of your life. Nick, I'm grasping and guessing because I don't know your family history as well, but I'm guessing there's people around you that are in the giving world. And he's shaking his head no, I think.
Well, I mean, when I say no, my family's generous, but actually, I don't know. My mom was a teacher when I was a baby, but it's not to the same extent. No, surely not.
Right, and from my side, my wife is a school teacher. My father was not a school teacher, but was always still is a very giving person. Always like at a volunteer and just always giving back to the community and church and the Elks Club and the Boy Scouts. I mean, always extremely generous with their time. So I think these things, these things are a part of who we are, and I'm guessing that if people aren't collaborators, that they maybe don't have that support behind them.
Well, I think it's interesting because I'm not sure that it strengthens or proves either outlook, whether it's a lifetime of nurturing or inherent nature. I couldn't tell you, but the amazing thing is, even for people who don't necessarily want to seek out that active role, we have somebody in our house who is going through writing her college essay right now, and the topic of that was how, for her, she does not want to put herself out there, but she has found that even through her more internal listening kind of focus, she has become quite a leader in her own community in her own way. And I think it's really pretty remarkable that it takes a lot of different forms, but she is, and it's our daughter that I'm talking about, that it absolutely continues that way of being, of always adding to that group without ever having it to be about her.
Yeah, I think one point I just want to add on to what Jason just said is, I think it's really hard to nail it down to one thing, whether it's your upbringing or your DNA or your corporate culture or your ego. I think it's a combination of all of those things because, obviously most of our upbringings have been in the education and for better use of the word, collaborative, environment. But if I didn't work for a company, or if I hadn't worked for companies in the past that were collaborative spaces. I may not be as inclined to collaborate as I am today, and I also think that if you know my ego weren't in such a place where I'm fully cognizant of the fact that I don't know everything, I also don't feel like my willingness to collaborate would be in the same space. So I think there are definitely a lot of factors that go into that.
Well,
as we're talking about this, I'm thinking to myself that people who are way smarter than us about this kind of thing are going to be just slaughtering us on the very generalisms we're making here.
Maybe not. But what I think is really important in our industry, I think if you look at all of us, we either own our own or work for relatively small firms where you can create your own space and make your own impact and have it be felt throughout the organization. I mean, Oomph isn't tiny, but it's not so big that John can't really have a big impact in the area in which he works. And I think we all make these decisions about where we want to work and who we want to work with for very good reasons.
So how has collaboration in your own lives impacted your businesses and your careers and professions? How important is it, and how has it impacted you?
I think it's why I've quit every job I've ever had working for another company.
Why?
Not being able to collaborate, not being able to make the best contribution that I can make.
Because they weren't environments, Jason, that encourage that kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, and the worst of which was really the place where John and I worked together. It was not valued, and it was sort of actively pushed away, and it was a really unpleasant experience to be there, and a very sort of mentally unhealthy time.
I would like to put a caveat in there, not by me, but by others. I was always very willing to.
No, I mean, we had our own. It was you, me, and Hugo. I think we had a great relationship, and I think we all worked really well together. And I think you can look now and see where the three of us are, and see that has continued on.
So you created your own little collaborative space within an environment that was not so supportive of that.
Yeah, and you have to do that for your own sanity, and ideally it's not that isolated. But I think we seek out places where we can be of value and be valued.
So I'm interested in Nick and John's thoughts about what collaboration has meant to them professionally and in their businesses.
Well, professionally, my business has. Since I started collaborating with you guys and with the Drupal community, my business has more than doubled each year. I've been able to take on far more interesting and far more complex projects with confidence. And I think another thing to point out too is we've been talking about collaboration more on an equal footing, but I think there's at least three flavors of collaboration. There's collaboration between two groups of people or two people that are generally on equal footing in a project, and like they both are fairly knowledgeable about specific things, and they're just working together to get a project, make the project as great as it can be. Then there's collaboration where one of the parties is a mentor to the other person. So somebody's kind of new to the project or new to the technology, new to Drupal, and you're mentoring them, you're teaching them something. And they don't know anything about, say, for example, using the issue queue, and you're just teaching them how to use it. And then there's the inverse of that, where you're not the one mentoring, but you're the one being mentored. You have somebody that's been around longer and knows far more about a specific piece than you do, and they're mentoring you. So I mean, there's different flavors. I've taken part in all three. I think that there's stuff to be gained. You personally grow and gain stuff from any one of those relationships. When you collaborate with somebody that's kind of on equal footing, the project is going to come out better. If you're mentoring somebody, then you're helping somebody where you were, 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever, and you're also able to understand the technology better. and it just strengthens the community as a whole. And then if you're being mentored, then I mean it's generally pretty obvious where the benefit is there.
But I think it always flows both ways, and I think that the best experience is when you get to see it turn around at some point. Being the person who teaches somebody something, and later on, maybe you do work with them, or you see them doing the same thing, and you feel like you've passed on that, not just knowledge, but also an outlook that is really beneficial, because it makes you more important to the other people you work with, and that will always come back.
So as someone famous once said, when I left you, I was but the learner, but now I am the master.
Who said that, Nick?
Darth Vader.
Oh, okay.
That's somehow ruling the Empire with the Death Star is now the sign of good collaboration. Oh, awesome. I'm hanging out with a bunch of geeks.
John, how about you? Like, your thoughts of how collaboration has been an important part of your last 10 years?
Oh man, 10 years. Try 20 years, or basically my whole life. I think collaboration is one of those things that obviously is not just in work. It's in your home life as well. And I think every job I've ever had, I think I've been hired on my ability to collaborate and solve problems in a team environment, and work with a team to get to the the end goal. Even in college, my college job was as a guest services person at a hotel, essentially a bellhop, carrying bags and parking cars. And there the goal is very much different than it is in my my current job, but you're still working in a team, and the goal ultimately is one of two things: to make the most money in that day and to satisfy all of the guests. And you sometimes have to work together to do that. Most of the time you're working individually, but as a larger team. And sometimes you have to work together to do that. And I think doing that and having that experience has just helped in my collaboration, and it made me a better collaborator. So to say, like, how has it helped in my career, I think every job that I've ever had, I can point out different people or different scenarios where collaboration led to a better product or a better outcome or a better relationship.
There's just something else I wanted to add. I think I started out with a bit of a negative in saying I left every company because of not being able to make a good contribution. But I was thinking about this while John was talking, and but I still have relationships that came either with clients or with other people I worked with at all of those organizations that are with me to this day. There were great things that came from working at those companies that weren't necessarily tied to the company itself. So as long as you maintain your
Jason,
own...
what I heard in what you said though before, this is the way I heard it, is that collaboration is important to you, is an important part of what you are. So working in an environment that isn't supportive of that made you move on to the next place.
Yeah, but I just thought it was important to point out that even though the organization itself was not the right place for me to be, there were great relationships that came of it, and John's a perfect example of that. John and Matt at Rubik and you, I mean, those were all relationships that started while I was at an agency that was not a great place for me, and so I mean, there's always these great things that come from it if you look for them, and if that's in your nature to seek them out.
So, for people listening today, let's take the this is a Drupal podcast. Drupal developers, and they want to collaborate better. They hear the message of collaborating. They know they want to do it. What are some concrete steps that we could recommend to say, hey, if you really want to collaborate more, here's some ways you could find people to collaborate with, and this is maybe the first step you could do?
I'd say probably number one, because you can do it from anywhere, is the core mentoring hours. If you go to the Freenode Drupal channel, Pound Drupal, twice a week they have core mentoring hours, and they'll help you find. Jason mentioned earlier, sometimes just giving an issue where somebody can read the documentation and verify that it's accurate. That's helpful for the community, and it's also something that the core mentors are. They've tasked themselves with curating issues that meet people's skill level. So.
Yeah, and that happens in person at a lot of Drupal events as well. That's something that we added for the first time at Design for Drupal this past summer, and it's a great thing to add to Drupal events as they grow, is that notion of like a code sprint and code mentoring. Where you can teach people, as I think a lot of people hear what you said, Nick, and the first thing they've got to do is get a piece of software or do something that they're not familiar with, which is IRC. And it's really an incredibly not threatening thing once somebody actually shows you. But until I actually had installed an IRC client, I didn't realize it's just a chat room. That's all it is. It's just a different word to apply to it, but it was really not threatening. And I think I'm a good example because I'm not a developer really. I'm a designer, and I shy away from. Just you be quiet. I don't put myself in your league or Nick's league or John's really in terms of knowledge of more in-depth development. So it's not in my nature to pick up an IRC client. I try and be better at it, but there's tons of issues that I've been able to help out with. And I think the first step is just deciding that you shouldn't just solve the problem for yourself. I think that's the easiest step to take, is you just solved something in a module or in a theme or something that was a thorn in your side. Make sure you post that back to that project so everybody else gets the benefit of the solution. Even if it's not a patch, even if it's a description of what you did, that's a really easy first step.
Yeah, exactly, because you might not know how to patch it, or maybe even you patch it, you just don't know you don't know the module very well, so you don't know the exact place to put that. Putting that there will give the module maintainers the information they need in order to fix it correctly.
Yeah, perfect case in point. I've been using the image caption module for years in order to embed images into text areas, and I have modified it for years in order to get the HTML output that I want. And I had never gone back and added it as a patch. And it got to the point where I had to do that in order for a client to want to bring it into their environment. And I went back and I found that sometime in the last few years somebody did almost exactly the same thing, but it's never been rolled in because there's one little step that needs to be done to make it more universal. And so I can't code it, but I could describe it. So that's what I did. I pointed the client to that patch, and then I commented on the issue queue and said, here's the things that I think we ought to do. I don't quite know how to do it, but let's do this so it can work with the older modules, but this switch to work more appropriately in a responsive HTML5 way of doing things. And at least that's a start.
So the advice I would give here is just ask. If you want to collaborate with someone, if you're interested in things they know and you think you can help them and they can help you, just ask them.
That's actually how I got involved as a co-maintainer of the Typekit module years ago. But I just wanted to fix it, so I asked him if I could, and that was it. I mean, basically just dumped it in my lap, but still, that was the beginning.
All right, so if does anyone else have anything they'd like to say about collaboration before we move on to our module of the week?
I mean, there's so much to say.
Yeah.
And I think that, we talked briefly about people that aren't great collaborators. I really think that if you're not a great collaborator, you can always become a great collaborator. I also think that, at least personally, people that I've found to be not great collaborators or not effective collaborators, I've tended to not work with them as well, and not reach out to them for things. So, I think all in all, if you're not a great collaborator, or you feel like you could be a better collaborator, I think it's in everybody's best interests to try to be the best collaborator you can be.
Hi, my name's Steve. I'm not a great collaborator. I need some help. So I think the first step in collaborating is accepting the fact that you don't collaborate well and you want to learn how to do it. So
It's the anti-Fight Club mentality.
yeah, exactly.
The first thing about collaboration is to talk about collaboration.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of mean to say, but I think you also have to get out of your own head,
Well, yeah, absolutely.
You have to know what you don't know, and you have to be able to put your ego aside and say, hey, I don't know something. I need to.
Well, actually, the perfect thing is, what's the first thing that we do when we're introducing another developer to working with Drupal is to get them to stop trying to solve all the problems in the way that they assume they should be solved and look around and ask and spend some time on Google and learn how Drupal does things, and then learn how other people in the Drupal community do things. If you find yourself having to solve a tough problem, the first thing that you should do is actually go and ask and see if somebody else has solved it. And it'll just save you hours and hours of time. So, I mean, even just from a pure efficiency standpoint, you'll save your own sanity by getting better at asking what other people do, and then you can bring your own judgment to it and see if it's the right answer for you, and maybe contribute back a different opinion.
So, meta tag, the module of the week.
Yeah, so this week, the module of the week is meta tag. Meta tag allows you to set defaults and override on a per page, per node, per context, per view, per pretty much anything now. Case-by-case basis. Set things like the page title, the meta description, the meta keywords. You can use tokens to replace, so you could, for example, pull the summary of the node that you're on and put that in the description. You can pull a particular field that's on the node and put that in the page title. It's really easy to use, and you can do pretty much any meta tag that goes in the header tag of the HTML document. For example, I have a website that pulls information from children's sites, and in order to avoid duplicate content, I have meta tag setting the canonical URL to the child site when it imports automatically, so that way Google's not going to complain. And it's very very easy. It's just using tokens.
Yeah, it's one of those modules that should likely be just in the toolkit all the time. And so even just at its base defaults, it's still going to help the site perform better in search and be a little bit more machine understandable. And then you can tweak it, to your heart's content from there.
I don't know if Nick mentioned this, but they also added in the ability to change the page titles into the meta tag module. That used to be a separate module, and now you have the ability to change your page titles on a page-by-page basis with the meta tag module, and that's really helpful for SEO and making sure that your page titles make sense and get you better SEO ranking.
One thing I'd actually like to know, if you guys know an answer to that's been requested a couple of times, do you know of a way to set it up so that it will count characters? For example, the page title so it won't be more than 70 characters, or the description will be less than 250. I've had that requested a couple of times.
Wasn't there? There's an add-in module that adds that via JavaScript to any text field that you want. And I'm trying to remember the name of it because I think it was already bundled into the platform that we're working on at the moment.
It's going to have to be the module week next week.
Yeah, really. I'll try and find that because it really is incredibly helpful, and it works on both text fields and text areas, and it adds in a little field so it can tell people how many characters they have, and it counts down for them and stuff. I'll look around and try and find that.
Cool.
All right, guys. So here we are at the end of number 70. Next week, we have episode 71, which we're going to be talking about mobile-friendly Drupal. So looking forward to that show. That would be recorded next Wednesday. Jason, tell us where people can find you online, anything you have coming up that you'd like to tell us about.
Sure. You can find me at jpomentel pretty much anywhere. Finally back to my usual haunts in the morning around Turner Reservoir with Tristan. And I will, on Saturday, be down at the Brown University campus to speak about responsive typography at Newt Camp and generally help out as I may, and support of all of you and my wonderful wife as you put on the event. You should definitely check out rwt.io, which is the site where you can find information about my book on responsive typography, and webcoffee.co for the new workshop.
Excellent. How about you, John?
Oh man, you will definitely be able to find me at Nude Camp this Saturday. And next month I will also be speaking at the Newport Interactive Marketers
nice.
down in Newport, Rhode Island. So if you're in the area,
John?
What's that?
What date is that?
That would be November 18th.
Nice.
And that'll be down at Midtown Oyster Bar in Newport. I believe it's from 6 to 9. So
what's the topic?
The topic is, the title is up in the air still, but it's essentially going to be for business owners and small businesses on how to protect yourself and your small business from your agency or developer disappearing. And I'm gonna come up with a better title than
That's a great topic though.
Oh yeah, it really is.
Small business, that's an excellent topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good group. That usually gets a pretty good turnout. It's been going on for quite some time. It's Sue McDonald, right?
Yep, exactly. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I think the topic's...
John, are you doing the presentation?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, okay, all right.
Hence the I'm presenting.
All right, well, did you say that, or did you say I'll be at?
No, he said he was presenting. A little
Okay,
bit of sarcasm coming in here.
All right.
But as always, if you can't meet me at those two things, you can find me on the social networks at John Picozzi or always on at oomfink.com.
Awesome. How about you, Nick?
You can find me online at NixVan pretty much everywhere, and this weekend, of course, at the same place as all of you all, down in beautiful Providence, Rhode Island. Bring an umbrella, but it's going to be mostly indoors, so it'll be a great event.
Because it's going to be raining knowledge.
Yes.
Exactly.
In which case you probably don't want the umbrella because you don't want to miss it.
And you can find me online at Stephen Cross on Twitter. Also, we started a webinar series at Parallax last month. Had great turnout on our last webinar, and we have one coming up. I think it's the 11th. Now I'm not sure what the date is, but if you go to parallaxinfotech.com, we have one where we're talking about Drupal, ways you can use Drupal in your business. So if you're interested on Drupal doesn't always need to be used as just a website. There's lots of ways you can use Drupal in a business. So that's what that webinar is about. If you go to our website, parallaxinfotech.com, you can sign up for that webinar there. It's on a Tuesday, whatever the second Tuesday in.
I think it is the 11th.
The 11th, okay, thank you. I couldn't remember.
We're doing one in January, aren't we?
We are. I haven't officially announced that yet, so go ahead, Jason. So Parallax is having a webinar. We're doing the second Tuesday of every month, And in January, Jason is joining us to talk about web typography and how it impacts your business.
Yeah, so this is going to be very much sort of an introduction to typography and
from a business perspective, not from a technical side, which
right,
I think is an important slant on this.
Right, because it's really about how it can support your brand and your communication more effectively when it's considered, and help you be more unique. It can help. I mean, so there's lots of things to consider without actually getting into the technical stuff, which you hope your developer is going to just take care of for you.
Yeah, and a key point of this presentation with Jason would be that if your developer is not bringing these things up to you, it's time for you to poke them a little bit and maybe point them in a direction to help them out.
Yeah, they could go to a workshop just a couple weeks later, right up in Boston.
Exactly. Excellent. All right, guys. So, hey, it's great to have everyone back on the phone again this week. I say phone, right?
Yeah, we're recording it on tape. Betamax, I think.
Exactly, right.
Send it around by carrier pigeon later this afternoon.
Exactly. Go to your Blockbuster and rent it later.
I think he's poking fun at your age, but...
All right, guys, take care, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday, and see you on Saturday.
All right, take care, guys.
See you.
Have a good one.